Recording started.
Recorded live.
Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Community's Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 503. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today I have my regular co-host, Corey Romero. Today is Wednesday, March 11th, 2020. This is the VMware Community Podcast. We are on YouTube, so if you are watching us on YouTube, give us a subscribe and a like. We're looking to get over 100 subscribers so we can brand ourselves. So do us a favor, go look for the VMware Community Podcast on YouTube and give us a subscribe so we can cross over on 100 and brand ourselves correctly on YouTube. And with that, we will get started. Corey Romero, how you doing today?
Hey, Eric, I'm doing great. A lot of stuff happening this week, huh?
It has been super busy. Yes, this is the week of the big launch. We are now past the March 10th event, and we can talk about vSphere 7. We can actually say the number 7. And we can also talk about Tanzu and Project Pacific now in vSphere. A lot of exciting stuff going on, and it's been a good week. On the show today, we're going to move on and talk about VMworld 2020 and the session topics that are happening, and we've got call for papers and all of that stuff to talk to. So on the show today, we're going to have Allison Crooker. I think I'm saying that right, Director of Event Content.
You are.
Perfect, Allison. Great to have you on the call and have you virtually in the campus. We'll talk about the whole virtual movement going on this week as we move into the next 3 months. Lots of activity there. And then Miriam Scoble, she's the manager of event content at VMware as well. Miriam, welcome to the show. Well, maybe Miriam has muted us, but that's okay. We're going to talk to both Allison and Miriam today to talk about event content for VMworld. But before we get to that, let's do a little bit of the news. Corey Romero, I know that you've been doing stuff with vExperts. I will do a shout out before I go to you just to talk about all the vExpert blog articles that were part of the event yesterday. There are some fantastic blog articles out there. I know you've posted a list of them on blogs.vmware.com/vExpert. There's like 50 great blog articles out there from guys like Victor Wu, Nathan Bennett, Ronald Zhang, lots of names I can't pronounce. Eric Siebert's got one, Brian Eden, just on and on the list. I could shout out, I think, 50 names on that list of blog articles. Yeah. So you guys really, and they're great articles. I'll just mention my favorite article that's out there is on plain-vert.blogspot.com. The blog name is Plain Virtual, and he's just got a great list of all the vSphere features, not just talking about Project Pacific, but all the things that are in there in a new release of vSphere. My favorite one is moving the DRS time that they do syncs from 5 minutes down to 1 minute, which means DRS, disaster recovery, will be taking snapshots every minute now as opposed to every 5 minutes, which that's super cool, only because yesterday when we were doing the launch, we actually had a failover. Somewhere around minute 15, we failed over to a backup server, and our failover happened in like 2 seconds. So if you're watching the launch and you were streaming real time, you might have seen a momentary pause of about a second or two, which is super cool to have, a smaller window of time when you're failing over. Great blog article, plain-vert, just one of many vExpert blogs. So you must have been pretty busy for the last few weeks working with vExperts.
Yes, absolutely. We worked with the comms team as well as the business units, and 50 different vExperts that were invited to these private NDA sessions. And we spent a couple hours going through slides, going through deep dives of all of these products and what's coming out. And so it allowed the vExperts to go and write their blogs and publish them the morning of the launch, which was yesterday. So fantastic articles. Thanks to all the vExperts. You guys rock as usual. And just great stuff. Go and read it. Like Eric said, blogs.vmware.com/vExpert.
Yeah, very nice. And I know that over the next couple months, we're going to be doing marketing, driving people to these articles because they have great content. And so, in conjunction with our program and the vExperts, we'll continue to talk about the great features that are out there. And, even in Kubernetes, what does it mean for all the community members to now have Kubernetes just embedded in vSphere, right? And that's going to open up a whole bunch of training, a whole bunch of market opportunities. It allows all of us as IT practitioners to get in the business of delivering microservice-based platforms to our developer constituents, which is a growth spot for us. So that's pretty neat. What else is going on with vExperts?
Yeah, so we announced, the vExpert program, and then right after that, we kicked off 6 different sub-programs. And the sub-programs are, smaller programs that work directly with the business units throughout the year. And so we kicked off the Cloud Management Program, the EUC sub-program, HCX, NSX, Security, and Pro. And you can go to any of these blogs. So you can go to blogs.vmware.com/EUC, and you can read all about the vExpert sub-program, right? So if you're a vExpert, go check that out. If you're not a vExpert, go check it out and see the benefits of becoming a vExpert and being a part of one of these sub-programs.
Very nice. Yes, absolutely. Good for everybody, good for yourself, good for your career. So, yeah, nice. All right. With that, I think the only other piece of news is obviously the virus. We're just marching through it. We're moving everything to virtual. We're going to be doing more live streams for the code sessions. So lots of activity, flipping things from going to events to doing online sessions. Obviously, the VMware Community Podcast. I'm in the studio. A lot of the building is emptied out. A lot of the tech in Silicon Valley have made us optional work from home, and a lot of people are taking that option just to kind of slow the progress of the disease throughout California. We're not big; it's not big all over the place in California, but there are handfuls of people that are showing up with it, and so they're encouraging us to work from home and stay out of giant populations. So we're doing that, but yet at the same time, we're still moving forward with business. We've still got a lot of activity going on, and in my case, I live near Palo Alto, so it's easy to come into the podcast studio, do the podcast locally with Julia, wipe our hands down, and move forward as business and managing our risk, but keeping our targets and moving forward. And I think all of us throughout the U.S. and in Europe and Asia are going to take precautions, but keep the lights on and keep moving forward. We have a life to live, so that's what we're doing here in Palo Alto. But know what your strategy is, what your risks are, and minimize those risks, and then move forward. So that's what we're doing. So speaking of moving forward, we will get to our main topic now, which is VMworld and what's happening with call for papers and the content that we're focusing on. First, let me introduce Allison. Allison, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? How long have you been at VMware, and what do you do here?
We don't have her.
Hey, Corey, are you still on the call?
Yep, I'm still here.
We lost Allison.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm one of those people who forgets to put on the mute.
Hey,
So,
well, welcome back
sorry.
to the call. Great, perfect.
I'm back.
So tell Alice, you're one of my favorite people here at VMware. Just so you know,
Aw.
and your dog.
Thank you.
I love Jax as well. Your dog. It's an amazing dog. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been here, and what do you work on?
Absolutely. So about 3 years. This is my third VMworld. Before that, I was at NVIDIA, and I managed their event content for their GPU technology conference. And for many years before that, I was actually in the financial industry running user conferences for large financial institutions. So I've been doing event content for a long time, and it's one of those specialties that has developed over the years. So I focus on, and my team focuses on, creating all of the different educational distribution channels for our user conference for VMworld. And that's what we focus on and it's a year-round job.
So it's a real
So we started in
year-round job.
January.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You basically get the holidays off after VMworld Europe, and then your guys are starting to plan even a little bit before the beginning of the year, and then you're back on it, right? I know that. Yeah,
Yep.
it almost seems like you also start doing some work in October, before even the Europe one is done. You're already thinking about things and how to restructure things. So it's almost like you just don't do things serially. There are things that you're working on for the next year before the current year is even over.
Absolutely, because it's really important for us to get feedback. We have a lot of stakeholders, right? We have our speakers, we have our attendees, we have our different BUs, we have our, track leads. We have a lot of stakeholders that are involved in the creation of this content and the absorption of it too. So we want to get their feedback both on the process and the end result. So there's a lot of that going on. Immediately after the live event, we're already working on how we can do things better. And also some of the stuff that we want to do takes some lead time, right? Like you think that we can just pop up a conference, but it takes months of lead time, especially if we're trying to do some new things. So yeah, it's year-round event.
And don't you guys also just sign contracts with the venues for a multi-year deal? So you're already doing planning out, right? You're not just sitting going, okay, next year let's figure out what we're going to do. You kind of have a roadmap of things, and you lock those roadmaps down, years in advance as we move forward.
Yeah, the VMworld team, we are just represented here by me for our content.
Sure.
But we have an entire team of operations staff as well, who my colleague Catherine Hind manages. And, she's working multiple years in advance. I'm just kind of 1 year in advance. She's multiple years in advance, like you said, in terms of locations and hotels and all of the infrastructure that's required to make VMworld successful, both here and in Europe.
So you mentioned ratings, and before we talk about how you figure out what the next year, content schedule is going to look like, ratings are actually kind of important for that process, because I know we all fill out our forms at the end of each session. You guys take that pretty serious, right? And you use that as part of the equation for the following year. And I think most of us know that, but do you actually, what are the kind of things that you're looking for when you're looking at ratings that change your decision process?
Yeah, we do a lot of data analysis. So we look at, did you vote with your feet, right? How many butts in seats do we have in a particular session? Because that's a good indication of popularity. But then we also look at the ratings. That's why we're always stressing how important it is for our attendees to submit those evals, because we really do look at them. And when I'm and my team are deciding on allocations for the next year, we look at the previous year's ratings on their speakers, on their content, and the butts in seats, to make sure that we're giving attendees what they've told us they want. We want to create content, obviously, at VMware that lets attendees know about the things that are important to us, but we also want to make sure that we're providing content that's important to them. So we have to use whatever indications we have and whatever data we can collect to make sure that we're making that balance, the correct balance.
Do you guys?
So we look at scores.
Yeah. Do you guys look at when time? Like if you get a Thursday afternoon slot, does that equate into the number of butts and seats? Because I know I always look and I go, that wasn't fair. I had a Thursday afternoon slot. Right? That's what. Or they give me a 7 a.m. slot. Right.
We do look at it as to the benchmark of the average, so that we're taking into account that Thursday is going to be lighter and Sunday was not all rooms, but Monday is going to be peak. So we try to give it a normalization and then use the benchmark against all sessions. So if you're below the benchmark, then even on a Thursday where a lot of our experts, I think, still attend,
right.
There's still that kind of level. So we do try to normalize it. So we're not penalizing the Thursday sessions necessarily, because there's good content on Thursday, and people do still go to sessions, although not as many people as on
Right.
Monday.
Right. So
in
on
the US.
yeah, on
In the
session on session rating, we haven't talked about the tracks yet, but if you're rating things, does that play into allocation based on versus just pure VMware wants to talk about XYZ? Do you balance that from popularity versus what we want to talk about year after year?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, there is, and you said there's a balance. There are important things and messages that we want to make sure our users hear, and then there are important messages and topics that the users want to hear and also take part in through different session types.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a balance, and we always try to make sure that we're reaching that, and we do a lot of focus groups. So we'll be doing another focus group with our vMugs coming up shortly that will want to test some of our new ideas, our 2020 ideas against, and see what they think. So yeah, we're constantly reaching out and trying to get some feedback from the people who attend.
Fantastic. So let's talk about what we're doing with topics, right, and tracks. So how you're planning for next year now? You're in December, January. How does that work?
Yeah, so I start working with our solutions team. So we really are working with them as they're developing the framework and the IT initiatives, the solutions framework and the IT initiatives that will be used for our internal worldwide sales kickoff. We are in alignment with them during that process. So hopefully by the time we're in February, we also have our framework. And I think Julia was going to do a little display of what we have in store for 2020. It shouldn't be of a big surprise to anybody because you've seen some of the initiatives that
Julia's
like,
can
at
you?
the beginning.
She has you on Zoom. Do you want to share that, or does she want to share it?
Sure. Let me.
Are you sharing it, Julia?
Whichever is.
You? So Julia's going to share it. So we'll let her share it. So if you're on the YouTube channel, you can look at the slide that we're going to be sharing momentarily. So that's good. There are a couple comments that are on the stream. So let me see. There's a little bit of worry on if VMworld goes virtual. How many people will actually show up on virtual, and how many people do we have live on the podcast right now? And the question is, does virtual actually work? And I'll let you chime in, but I'll chime in my own stuff. We've always published sessions live on VMworld, VMworld sessions on our streaming services, whether it's YouTube or whether it's Brightcove on VMworld.com. And I would say that session viewage online is big, right? So we got 25, maybe 30,000 or 40,000, whatever the number is, coming to the show, but we literally have maybe 20,000 views of sessions online per day, where over the course of a year, when I was running those sessions online, I think the totals for session viewage would be upwards of 1 million. And so the reality is VMworld's a great event. We encourage people to come because of all the community and social interaction. But at the same time, the content and the content capture is also big, and we do live stream that stuff as it goes either way. So millions of downloads of our content happen regardless of whether you come to the show or not. And obviously, we want to have the show. So that's my take on that answer. Allison, do you need to add anything on that, or is that pretty much your perspective?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much, as you mentioned, we record all of our breakout sessions and panel discussions. This year we'll probably also record some of our longer form sessions and maybe even some of our shorter form sessions. So, but right now, the 700 or so breakout sessions that are at VMworld US are posted for anybody, as long as you have a My VMworld account, and that's free to actually set one up. You can watch it the following day. So Monday sessions are posted first thing Tuesday morning, and so on. So yeah, we've seen really good pickup. In fact, a lot of people who view, in the tens of thousands, are actually not the VMworld attendees. They are people who are not on site. Some people do watch it on site. Obviously, they can't make. We have 28 rooms running at the same time. So
that's right.
There's
That's
bound
part
to
of the
be a
show
session or two
experience.
that you can't see.
Yeah, the show experience is going to be, you're going to get to maybe 5 a day if you're lucky, and there's 700 sessions, so everybody comes online to view this stuff as it goes. All right, does Julia have the slide up? She gives me the yes, it's up. So why don't you take us through that?
Oh, cool. All right. Well, as you mentioned, as I said, Eric, earlier on, we have the new developments and the new announcements coming out. So, around our app modernization and our cloud products, also the focus on intrinsic security. So those 3 tracks are new. I would say this year, app modernization had a component track with actually 4 sub-tracks. So it is a large track as well. And then our virtual cloud network is our NSX family, and our digital workspace is once again back with, our end user computing workspace 1 group. For the conference, we always have this emerging trends bucket. It's someplace that we can put things that aren't productized yet, and that's where our ML, AI, and HPC, as well as our Office of the CTO are, and they have been for a few years now. And this year, what's new is we also have our professional development track explicitly called out. That, from a track standpoint, is a development that occurred because last year we had such great attendance and ratings for the professional development sessions that we had, that we really want to call it out very clearly, have it aligned and expanded this year. So that is something that's new.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, it's nice to see the tracks. The tracks line up for our business, and then we have some professional development, and I like everything that's there, and it makes logical sense. When we're setting up the tracks, then when we talk about, call for content, right? I know that over the different years, this has moved back and forth from, we'll do a call for content, we'll accept all papers externally, to we'll do a call to content inside of VMware, and we'll just select a lot of those content. Then there's the ratios of, content submitted versus denied, right? And how, we got at some point 3,000 papers submitted, ideas, and then how do we take that through? So when you guys are looking at identifying what sessions to accept in all of these tracks, what does that look like, to be kind of transparent?
Yeah, sure, of course. I'm an open kimono kind of person. So we set up against all these tracks. We have a team of people, and there's a first line of the team, which is really our solution strategists, aligned to these main tracks and sub-tracks are really the people who not only yet in the BU, but are in the solutions team, who have a broad look at these tracks. So app modernization, yes, is Kubernetes, and it's also modern apps, but somebody has to be even above that to really make sure that the whole picture is being contained within the sub-tracks. So we have that first level of reviews that come from our solutions team predominantly, who will take an active part in looking at the accepted sessions. But in the kind of like the groundwork, the yeomen are really our track team leads. And for the U.S., they are predominantly represented by the business units. So, for instance, there's Tasha from Pivotal, who's going to be the track lead for app modernization. My team will meet with her every week. Once the call for papers closes, we have a system that allows, for instance, we can have Tasha be able to see not only app modernization, but maybe she needs to see cloud sessions as well, because guess what? There's a lot of overlap going on here. So we're letting the track leads really get the meat of all of the submissions, and then they meet with their teams. We're meeting with Tasha, but Tasha's meeting with probably 6 or 7 other people that are in her BU, in the MAP BU for VMware, to discuss and to review and to rate and to score, and to really then come back to us the following week with some guidance as to where they're going. So there are a lot of people involved in the selection of content. And we also have our customer references and our partner teams involved. So they're going to make sure that customers are getting speaking opportunities and partners are getting speaking opportunities. We do have an external call this year. So like you mentioned, Eric, it's been on, it's been off, it's been morphed.
Right.
We are doing a straight external call for proposals this year. It will be posted on our website tomorrow. It is open until April 10th. And I think a lot of times those submissions, they all get reviewed. And sometimes speakers are asked to join a VMware person. So a lot of times we have more joint sessions probably than we do have straight alone partner or customer sessions that are part of the great call for proposals.
Yeah, I can see community as a community guy. I like that model a little bit different, better than in previous years or when we flip back and forth to no versus yes. And it always tends to be it's a knife blade, because when you open it up, you get thousands, and then you're almost hurting people's feelings, right? Because when you get thousands of presentations and you only have 700 slots, and you have partners that are in part of those slots, right? The number that you actually have for everybody to try to convince someone that you're the one is maybe a couple hundred, right? And we bundled, we have some sessions that we pull together. We do the best we can, right? But in a real sense, sometimes you're just making 2,000 people upset because they didn't get chosen, or it's kind of like a demotivator. And then when you don't open it up, then you have a lot of people that say, "Hey, we're not being open, right, about subjects." And so it's one of the things you have to do, but we do have to let people know that we're doing the best we can with the number of slots that we actually have.
Yeah, it is. I'm part of, and I help develop a group called the Event Content Council, and we're a bunch of event content people who are, from the big tech companies, and Microsoft and Google and Salesforce and all of them. And we talk about this a lot because, we have the phrase, the call for disappointment. It's like the chances are very slim that your exact proposal is going to be accepted. One, we get a lot of the same sessions, so, everybody has to decide. You only have maybe 15 sessions in a track that, and you have thousands of submissions. It's really challenging to make sure that everybody gets a fair chance.
A fair chance at a session.
Like you said,
sure.
We do the best we can.
Right.
We do the best we can.
Yeah. And that's why
Let me.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was also just going to say, oh, sorry, somebody else was there?
No.
Is that me echoing? That's me echoing.
Yep.
I was just going to say, as we're going over the sessions with the track leads, we as the content team, our job is to try to influence them, to make sure it's a diverse speaker faculty, not only diversity in terms of, gender and ethnicity, but also, roles at VMware. We want to make sure we have technical marketing, and we have product marketing, and we have professional services and education, and there's a lot of different diversity that we want to make sure is seen. And we meet with them. That's why we meet with them every week to go over it, to help them, hopefully guide them to a more robust set of sessions.
We have a couple questions on chat, so I'm going to take a break for a second just to ask you a couple of those, as long as we're just looking at them. Most of them are pretty simple. One of them that's a common theme from Adam Eckerly and some others is, how many sessions can a BU submit? I think you talked a little bit about that. If you have a track, it's in the numbers under 20, right, or maybe 30 at the most. So
yeah, obviously there are the big BUs, like CPBU, probably has a little bit more than that, but on average, we're talking about 25. And if that question is regarding an individual from a BU submitting, I'm going to say one thing, which is a lot of people submit multiple sessions, but it's basically the same session just in every track, trying to hopefully increase their chance of getting selected. But this isn't a lottery, so it's like the more you submit isn't necessarily the better your chance of getting accepted. And that's a pet peeve of mine, and also I think of the track leads, because it's really challenging to do that, to have one person submit 20 sessions across all the different tracks is just, yeah, it's a little challenging. So
I know.
we ask,
Right.
you
I know.
put your best idea in.
Right.
ahead.
It is true that we actually kind of go blind when it comes to the people submitting it. We really do. I know I've been a track lead for a year or two off and on for code and other ones, and we don't look at who it is. We actually have the spreadsheet and we minimize the speaker name, right? And then we just go through and we read the descriptions, and on people that are submitting, many of them, you can really see the quality of the submission go down, where they didn't really spend a lot of time on an idea, or they hadn't been working on that idea for the last year and a half, and now they want to actually share it. It's almost like they just made up an idea that they thought would be an interesting one that maybe I would choose. But you can tell the ones where people have actually worked on an idea, worked at a customer site, worked on some form of their talk for for a half a year or a year, and then they're submitting it as their one great idea. Those ones do much better than the I submitted 10 different ideas, because the descriptions tend to be 2 paragraphs, and you're like, yeah, all right, you can tell. So as a reviewer, you can actually make sense of it, which is interesting.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, an interesting comment in that I've afterwards had very famous people come back and go, but you didn't choose my talk. I'm famous. And we're like, well, we didn't know it was your talk, 1, because we don't look at who they are, and 2, your description was 3 lines. So sorry. Right, like it can happen that way.
Yeah.
So we're just real people.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, Eric. It's really important to have a really well thought out title and abstract when you submit your proposal. And we do also post both internally on Vault as well as on the website tomorrow what we call our submission guidelines. And we change the key objectives, or the what we're looking for portion of the submission guidelines, every year. So I would strongly recommend looking at that, because it will give a submitter an idea of at least kind of the direction that we're looking for the content to be going towards. So I would highly recommend checking out the submission guidelines before you submit your proposal.
Adam Eckerly on chat also mentions that for a little while ago there was this notion that went around that if you did a super creative title or abstract, that somehow that would actually get you a leg up. And he wants to just say, because I know he's reviewed stuff, that actually probably negatively impacts your submission, because if you oversell something, that also becomes apparent, right? That you just went super crazy on some description and abstract, but then the whole description of your paper doesn't really support that. And I know I've seen that a lot as well, where people make a really cool title, and then I get into reading what they're going to be talking about, and it's like, yeah, that's not what your title doesn't match what you're going to be talking about at all. Right. And then you can add next. Okay, so you do have to make your title and your description really be solid. It has to be a solid deal. You can't just get a paper. It's not gonna work that way. Just by being creative, you have to have worked on something for a year, have a really good solid concept. Describe your paper and so forth. So yeah, I think that's a given.
I mean,
right?
Being kind of catchy with your title. Think of your audience too, right? Like sometimes I see these catchy titles and it's like, huh? They knew what it was, and they thought it was kind of fun and funny. But our IT admins in the audience and other system admins want to kind of clearly understand what they're going to. So I'm not saying to be kind of frivolous or like try to be all marketing, but just make titles and abstract, like you said, Eric. And Adam's a rock star in terms of reviewers.
Right.
So listen to what Adam says.
Right. What is the phrase you use? Call for depression. What was the phrase you used when we do?
Call for disappointment.
Call for disappointment. So just to be on that for a minute, I know we do the V Brown Bag talks, the quick half-hour power talks, and we don't give free passes for those talks, but you do get a session number so you can show your boss that you're actually talking. And we do record them and live stream them, and so you have evidence that you gave a quick talk at VMworld. And so we also do things like that. There's a lot of different places that you can go engage with the community, and tweet about what's happening and get your message out there. And so for people that are just doing this to get a free badge, that's probably not going to work for you either. You really do want to have a passion around the topic, and there are a lot of venues to talk about your topic and engage with people. It's not just all about a paper any longer. There are lots of places that you can get exposure, right? So I would throw that out there too.
And I'll just jump on that because there is a new development this year that those who have already been to the portal, because we have opened it internally, there is only one pass per session. So no more. Last year we had two speaker passes.
Right.
This year there is one. And, we did that for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that we do want to mitigate I need a free pass to VMworld. We really want people to present who know the topic, who are intrinsic to the topic. I love that word, intrinsic. Who are really valued to the session. There will be some instances where we'll make exceptions. The track leads will have that determination. But this year there is only one complimentary pass per session.
Yeah, I think that's and even I'll say that last year we did VMware code sessions and we gave all the VMware code speakers a pass, and this year we're not going to do that. We're going to have a handful of code sessions this year, and then we're going to move everything into the V Brown Bag theater, and the V Brown Bag theaters don't give passes as well. And so the reality is, you really want to come to VMworld to get your message out. You're getting your message out different channels, and then if you happen to get selected as a speaker, fantastic. But that shouldn't be a strategy to get a pass, right? You should just stop that right off the bat, right? Because it's probably not going to work. And to your point, now there will only be one free session pass per session, which if you're doing a group session, it's not going to get all 7 of you to come sit on a stage and chat about a topic, right? So good to know. So it's going to be an interesting environment this year because we actually do really have some interesting topics that everybody should be learning, right? One is Tanzu and Kubernetes embedded in vSphere, right? And then 2 is just vSphere itself. And then 3, Carbon Black with security. We are really now a security company by the acquisition of Carbon Black. So it must be exciting for you to start looking at these topics and go, hey, these aren't just rinse and repeats from last year. These are some places that if you haven't been to a VMworld for a few years, this is going to be stuff that you're going to want to learn and grow as an IT administrator.
Absolutely. It is, our overall emphasis is to develop content that helps our IT admins, grow and expand into the roles that they need to be in. They need to be able to work with not only our products, but with other developers and, the security industry. It's just a big growth area for our main customers and our main users. So it's really exciting to be able to give them that content and show why it's relevant to them personally. So we're very excited about developing this with the 100 or so track team leads that we have involved for VMworld 2020.
I personally find it much more exciting, the topics of Tanzu and application modernization and cloud native apps, because we've always, the cloud itself, that was a nice topic where we had AWS, VMC and AWS, and that's nice, but that's basically just vSphere running over on AWS. Not that compelling to get me to come learn things, but when you open it up to modern applications and microservices, and we're not talking about building the apps, we're talking about what infrastructure you need to run those apps effectively. That's like a great expansion topic for everybody that's ever been to a VMworld before.
Yeah, we're really relevant. I think we've all internally, heard this a few times now with our sales kickoff and our company meeting. But, I like the tagline, run on VMware, right? It's really important. And our admins who are currently using, vSphere or maybe vSAN and other products need to hopefully see that this is the product suite that can be used for a lot of reasons, and so that's our main goal.
Yeah, and I think Project Pacific, Tanzu, basically servlets. What do we call it? Kubelets on vSphere, where you can run Kubernetes directly there. VLETs, I think they're called. I don't remember. Anyway, that notion of running apps native right on vSphere, that's just going to be a powerful thing for everybody to learn. And it's getting a lot of traction at the big corporate level. So we're seeing major corporations look at this going, oh, this is how we can just run your applications, microservice applications everywhere. So I think it's kind of cool. Other couple questions on chat, which does make me spin another question up, which is America versus Europe, and call for papers for both of those. He's asking about that. So maybe we could just cover, you know, what's the difference if I'm a speaker? Do I submit to America? Do I submit to Europe? How does that play out?
Yes, I was going to bring that up right now, too, because it is new for this year. I should say it's new for this year. We've done this before many years ago, but we're doing it now in the recent past. It's new. We're doing two separate calls. We're doing one for the U.S., which is open now, and then we're going to do one for Europe, which opens in May, actually on May 12th. The reason that we're separating the calls is so that what happened when we could submit for both, there was this tension, right? VMworld Europe is, although aligned to these same tracks, tends to have a very different content kind of catalog. And if you look at the top sessions in Europe, they're not the same sessions that were top in the U.S. We know that the speakers are sometimes different, and that there's some tension there that we'll work through. But this year, we want to be able to have, if you're interested in speaking at both U.S. and Europe, we're telling people just submit for your U.S., hold on to your confirmation email, because then, or the Word doc you created it in, and hold on till May, and then submit it again through the separate link that will be posted on May 12th. And we also have a separate team. The BU teams that are here in the U.S. will be in consultation with the European field teams, because Europe tends to be a much larger field effort for whatever reason than it is here in the U.S., which is much more of a business unit effort with obviously field and sales involved. But the roles switch a bit. So we're just working to really create a European program that's developed in consultation with the U.S. as opposed to kind of U.S., which kind of pushing into Europe. So that's why we separated the calls this year.
Okay, so just to summarize, in U.S., the BU looks at the track submissions and then engages with that. In Europe, it's actually the field teams that do the field marketing for the BUs that are actually closer to Europe. They know the European audience. They're working with the BUs, but then they just know companies and engagements and what's being consumed in Europe. So they work with the BU and then they make those choices. So it's just a little bit closer. But the reality is the BU field team actually works with the BU pretty closely.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Well, that I think that answers it. That answers the chat questions. What percentage of American prezos are delivered in EMEA historically? Have no idea.
I know, and that's a good data point. I'm not going to quote a number because I don't have that embedded in my head, but I will actually post that on SocialCast because we can get it. I would say that there is a large percentage of topics that haven't historically been replayed, done again in Europe. What we've seen, though, is that's probably like 80-20. 80% are sessions that were done in the U.S., 20% are new because of the time gap. August to November, there's going to be some new stuff happening. But the speakers are what we have seen change a lot. And so, that sensitivity has been challenging sometimes. I still expect that the same thing will happen, that there'll still be a lot of sessions in the U.S. held in Europe. I just think they'll may have a little bit of a tweak to it and a little bit of a different set of speakers. That's it.
Yeah, that makes sense, and people are chatting on the chat about that. But I've experienced that as well. There
I'm
are
sure. I'm sure.
there are differences between U.S. and Europe on the in the code world, right? Different regions. Europe is adopting some things quicker, and so they're more popular, and other things slower. The Europeans don't tend to game around very much. They don't play very much. So when we do things and activities that are fun and engaging, right? They're like, yeah, I got work to do. So they don't. So we've learned that over time. And as a code, track owner, we'll look for things in Europe that aren't, kind of like Raspberry Pi, hack around, go experiment. The experimentation is slightly different in Europe than in U.S. And so we know that, and so we won't do things in Europe that we were going to do in U.S. and vice versa. We'll look for other topics that will fill those gaps. And so yeah, it's a very real thing. But then maybe 50% of them are the same sessions, but like you say, done by different people. One because the person doesn't want to fly to Europe or doesn't want to fly to the U.S. and so we'll look for people that know the topic well, or a lot of times the U.S. person will make a recommendation for someone that could also give that topic in Europe, and then we'll hook up and make sure that's there because it's a super popular topic. We want to make sure somebody gives it. So, yep. All right. So, Allison, next topic that we want to talk about a little bit is, the unconference model and other models for doing content. Do you guys get into looking at some other ways to deliver content, or do you have some kind of stretch goals for the year on how to get engagement and do things different? I always ask people on the podcast, what are they trying to do this year that's different? What's some of the stretch goals? What do you think you got in your back pocket for new things, or what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and these are still, all being looked at. There are a lot of factors that go into it, but some of the things that we are looking at is doing some more content-related networking type sessions. So a lot of my peers have different session types. RSA, in particular, just came off with their engagement zone, where they did, we don't really do birds of a feather. I've done them at NVIDIA. We did them a lot.
Sure.
They're content related, but really small form networking. We do have our Meet the Expert roundtables, which are similar. So we're looking at how to maybe use Meet the Experts as more box-ish as well. There's a brain date functionality that a lot of the tech conferences are using that we're looking at as well. That's where you get to kind of peer-to-peer network. And similar also, once again, to the MTEs. We're also looking at some session types that are more like icebreakers, literally, more physical kind of events that are content related. We know Odyssey for hands-on labs was huge last year. Competition is something that I think our attendees really like, so we're looking to add to that in terms of content distribution via competition. Let's see, those are probably the main ones. We are also doing some stuff with our current sessions. For instance, some feedback we had from our attendees last year was that they'd like to be able to digitally ask questions instead of having to get up to the mic or yell or whatever.
Right.
So we are implementing that as a pilot this year as well, so that some of the sessions will have that capability. And then we can hopefully expand that next year, but we are going to pilot that this year. So we're always trying to think of different things to do to get our content out in different ways or to make the user experience better.
Yeah, I know that our booth, the VMware Communities booth, has always been popular in that it does create an environment where you hang out, you chat, you can talk to the guy that just did the talk because he'll hang out and chat. And 2 years ago, we actually funded a coffee bar so you could sit and have coffee and chat with everybody and then chat with the speakers, and the speakers could mill around. And I think those kind of environments that we've had over the past where it's kind of weird because you also get like a conference within a conference, right? Where where you have the hang space where there are these booths that are to kind of turn into these big ecosystems where people are engaging. And then on one hand, that that pulls people away from going to big session rooms where everybody can learn something together. So it doesn't scale as well, but then at the same time it offers these micro environments, whether it's birds of a feathers or other, kind of environments that create more of a community engagement model while you're learning. So it is an interesting trade-off.
And we'd like to use, like you mentioned, the booths. We'd like to use the square, is what we call it in the U.S. now that we're at Moscone. Where the lounges are, to be able to be those kind of environments where those micro conversations can happen, and use the square a lot more for pointing people to that direction. We also have those theaters, more content, more push content, but they like the MTN, then the Brown Bag and education. There are other venues that you can also get your content in shorter form, as well as 60-minute breakout sessions too.
Right. Exactly. So it sounds like you guys are busy. Maybe we should just touch as we come to the top of the hour here. What are the key dates for call for papers, submitting your papers? How does this roll out? I think you said tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, VMworld actually called for proposals internally at VMware, opened yesterday. Tomorrow is when the link will be posted on VMworld.com so that externals can start submitting. We close the call for proposals at the firm Friday, April 10th, end of day, Pacific time. So we will close the call for proposals for VMworld 2020 US on April 10th. We then begin our review process, and on June 2nd, we'll send out emails to all submitters who about their accepts and declines. And then on June 9th, we go live with the content catalog, which is our listing of all of the sessions that we'll be offering. And then closer to the event, a couple weeks before we go live in August, we will post the schedule. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but you'll see all that on the call as well.
Yeah, and we on this podcast, if you actually subscribe and hit that notification bell, we talk about it every single show as we come into May. We start talking about all the key dates at the opening of the show, so you can't possibly miss it. Which is good, because if you do come into Schedule Builder late, you could miss it. One other thing that I want to shout out to you guys is that I know you look at, how full a session is, and I know that you guys open up sessions if they fill up. And so I just want to shout out to you guys saying thank you for that, because that has really helped a lot of people, come to VMworld and get some of the sessions they want. So I know you do that. And then other thing is waiting in line. What's the waiting in line strategy? Is that still a good strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a fantastic strategy, because we do have a fair amount of attrition. Most of these tech conferences that get tens of thousands of people have like a 30% attrition, meaning 30% of the people who schedule their sessions don't actually come. So coming to the session that you really want to see, even if you weren't able to book a seat, and standing in that wait line, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get in, because there is such a high level of attrition. Also, we are looking this year of creating an overflow room, and that would allow us to then, we're paring back on some of the sessions in order to physically have space to use two of the rooms actually as this overflow. So we could push a session, if we're at capacity, we can push that session to the overflow area where we'll have 4 or 5 different screens. And you can go there, put on your silent disco headset, and watch from there. So we're looking at different ways to do it, but like you said, Eric, the main strategy is go online. Right. Get on that line.
Yeah. Get in the line. That works. You're saying that works, which I agree. 30% do drop out. So when you're in Schedule Builder, you guys are planning that. You're expecting that. That's switching gears. That's a great idea. You could have an overflow room if you've ever done those headphone discos where they have 3 different disco tracks that some people are dancing to red, somebody green, some are yellow, and everybody's dancing to different music themes. It's super cool. Are you guys maybe thinking about that type of headset where you could have different screens in the overflow room, and then there could be like 4 different sessions that are all overflowing, and depending on what color your headset is, you would be listening to the audio track of the particular session in an overflow room?
That is correct.
Oh,
That
that's
is exactly
brilliant.
it. It's the
That's
same
super
technology.
cool.
Yep.
That would be great. That would be fantastic because you could have just a huge overflow room with it's kind of like going to my sports bar, right? But with headsets that allow me to hear the audio track, and I'm just watching whatever game I want to watch while I'm drinking my Corona with lime beer. Beer joke.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yes. Very good joke, Eric.
Yes, that would be great. I like that. Looking forward to hearing more about that. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say, let everybody know that, my team is actively working behind the scenes to move rooms and switch capacities and try to balance all of that, add repeats, before the schedule builder goes live. So we're really doing the best that we can to do that within the confines of the physical reality we have to deal with. So don't want to think we just post it, and we haven't been thinking about it. It's a daily thing that we do before we go live with the schedule builder.
Neat. That's neat. All right. Well, thank you very much, Allison, for joining us. And Miriam Scoble, thanks for being on chat, answering questions on the YouTube chat. We are trying to pay attention to the YouTube questions as well while we're doing these live. So
and I want to give a shout out to Miriam, by the way. She is the manager extraordinaire. She is the right hand of this event content. It's really just the two of us. And so thank you, Miriam.
Yeah, thanks. And Adam Eckerly.
Crystal's on it too.
Crystal is on it as well. So great thing. We might have you on yet again closer to the event just to talk through what actually happening with that Overflow headset room, because I think that's such a new concept that we're going to have to share that with everybody, because I'm telling you that might change the game for me, because there are a lot of things I don't want to go stand in line for, but if there's like an overflow room for a popular session, I would definitely go do that. So that's super cool.
All right.
Good.
Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if we're going to do a V barbecue report today, because I'm not sure Tony Foster is on the call. I don't see him. I'll open it up and say, anybody got some great barbecue ideas? It is super warm out, and in order to get our vitamin D, you want to get outside and get some sunshine to get your vitamin D. Best way to protect yourself from the viruses that are floating around these days. I have not done any interesting barbecue other than we did some salmon, and I do fresh caught salmon because farm salmon has some issues. So fresh salmon on a barbecue is always a good thing to have. And salmon also boosts some of the chemistry you need for your immune system. So fish is really good for that. So go out there, get yourself some fish, barbecue up some fish, good for your immune system, get some sunshine, and everybody will be happy and healthy. And that's what we want for the year. I'm looking forward to things going forward. We have some interesting podcasts coming up. We're going to be talking to Rory from Director of Marketing next week on Test Drive. So Test Drive is this new platform we have that you can go get a month of a pre-configured VMware service. We're going to be having Rory come on and talk about Test Drive. And so we've got stuff lined up as we continue on throughout the month. So stay in the sunshine. Everybody have a great week, and we'll be back again next week. Thank you very much.
Recording paused.
And